Hello, fellow introverts. Welcome back to Absinthe and Ink. I'm MJ, and if you're like me, you probably own several different editions of some of your favorite books. And for me, one of those books is Dracula. Now, I own several different copies. One of them is this one from the British Library that I picked up in London probably 10-15 years ago. Another copy I picked up is this one. And I believe I picked this up at Barnes & Noble. And I think the reason that I picked it up is because the pages are sprayed black. And it has this kind of, this nice red ribbon for a bookmark. Another edition I have is this one. This is a leather-bound copy from the Easton Press. And you can see it's got this really nice gold gilt lettering on it. And the pages are sprayed gold, and there's even a little bookmark in there. So this is a pretty nice copy. The Annotated Dracula. And the reason that I like this book so much is that it's edited by Leslie Klinger, who is a well-known scholar on Dracula and Sherlock Holmes. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in this volume. This isn't just the story of Dracula. This has a lot of insight, kind of a behind the scenes type look at the story. And of course, I had to have this edition. Now this is nice because the cover is actually flocked and it has sprayed edges, which I love, but it's illustrated by Edward Gorey. But my favorite edition that I own is this one. And yes, it has a nice sparkly cover, and it does have, you know, the little quote on the back from the story. But what I really love about this book is that I bought it last October at Whitby Abbey, and they were kind enough to stamp it for me. Now, if you ever get the chance to go to Whitby, I highly, highly recommend it. But while I was planning this video, I started to wonder, does Booktube really need another review of Dracula? I mean, what can I say that hasn't already been said? And if you're watching this video, you probably already know what the story's about. But one thing that I thought Booktube could use was a review of this. These are the notes for Bram Stoker's Dracula. Now, this is not a substitute for the novel, which was published in 1897. So if you haven't read Dracula, go do that now and then come back to this book. Or else read this book alongside Dracula, because I think this is going to really enrich your experience with that book. Now, this book is really interesting for a lot of reasons. One of them being that it contains Stoker's handwritten notes for Dracula. Now, if there had been a contest for worst Victorian handwriting, Stoker would have won that hands down. Thankfully, those notes have been transcribed. Now, what's neat about these notes is that you get to see the creative process that Stoker was going through. And also, there are some things in the notes that didn't make it into the book. One of them being that Dracula picks the wrong coffin to take to England. I mean, to be fair, don't you just hate it when that happens? I mean, you thought you packed the black coffin, but when you get there, you discover it was just the really, really, really dark blue one. But what's interesting about that is that this opens up a lot of questions. You know, why was it the wrong coffin? And what consequences were connected to Dracula taking the wrong coffin? And was it even his coffin? Maybe he was taking it for somebody else. But another scene in the book, or in the notes rather, that doesn't make it into the book is a dinner party containing 13 guests, including the Count himself. And each guest at the dinner party tells about a weird event that's happened to them. And every guest after them adds on to that story. Now, what that story is, we're never going to know, because Stoker didn't put it in the novel, and he didn't really put any more in his notes about what the purpose of that was. But it is kind of intriguing to think that Stoker was maybe considering perhaps another subplot to go along with the main one. Now, another thing that was interesting that changed is that Van Helsing in Stoker's notes was originally going to be German, but as you know, if you've read the book, in the novel, he's actually Dutch. Now, I'm not going to tell you any more than that, because if you want to check this out, I don't want to give away all the wonderful little tidbits that are in there, because it's pretty exciting when you come across something and go, oh, well, that wasn't in the book. And it's kind of like Stoker sharing a little bit of a secret with you. Now, these aren't just Stoker's notes. There are also his research. And this research shows that Stoker was really putting a lot of thought and love, and he was really passionate about what he was researching. In his notes, he has everything from Romanian words that he's translated into English. He's also got newspaper clippings about shipwrecks. He also has medical notes from his brother, who was a doctor. As a matter of fact, I think Stoker had a couple of brothers who were doctors. He also has newspaper clippings about vampires in New England, as well as a little note about a French serial killer who was convinced he was a werewolf. Now, Stoker also included a glossary of Yorkshire dialect, which I think is absolutely charming. Now, towards the end of the book, there are some other interesting things that are included in this, and that includes a small biography about Stoker, a little section about the vampire myths, and it also has an analysis of each of the characters. And one thing that's particularly interesting is that there's a summary of what Dracula might have been like if Stoker had stuck to his original notes. But the one thing that I really liked about it, well, Stoker spent some time walking around St. Mary's graveyard in Whitby. Now, this graveyard has a lot of old graves in it, and it's right on the cliff overlooking the sea. And the salt water has done something really interesting to the headstones. They almost look like they're bubbling in a way. And so you can't really read them anymore. But 100 some years ago, when Stoker was doing his research, he could read those names. And so he's transcribed a lot of them in his notes. And they also include the cause of death. And most of them were due to drowning or shipwrecks. So that was really interesting. But the one thing you won't find in Stoker's notes about St. Mary's Cemetery is where Dracula's grave is, because there isn't one. There's even a sign that the staff has put on by the church that says, please stop asking us where the grave is, because Dracula was a fictional character. But one of the things you will find in Whitby are some of the best fish and chips I've ever had. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing, and also let me know below. Have you been to Whitby? Have you read Dracula? What are your favorite novels that you have more than one copy of? So I want to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Absinthe and Ink. Bye-bye.